There was a dog in the window of the yellow house on Linden Street, and he was always looking at the same patch of road. 3:10, every afternoon, his ears went up before any car came, like he could hear something the street hadn't made yet. The neighbors had a name for it. They called him the dog that was waiting for the boy who never came back. They were right about the waiting. They had the rest of it wrong. The boy was you. And you weren't dead. You were just somewhere else, getting on with your life, the way people do. Rusty came home in a shoebox when you were 9, small enough to sleep in your cupped hands. You named him for the color of him, the exact brown of the rust on your bike chain. He was yours before he was anyone's. He decided that on the first night, asleep against your chest. Here is how the window started. School let out at 3, the bus dropped you at the corner at 10 past, and you walked the last 40 steps to the gate. Somewhere in those 40 steps, Rusty learned to be at the glass, nose up, breath fogging it, waiting for the shape of you to turn in at the maple tree. You didn't teach him that. He taught himself, because you were the best thing that happened to every single day. The bus had a sound, the air brakes, a long, tired hiss as it stopped. To you it meant nothing. To him it meant you were 90 seconds away. By the time your sneakers hit the porch, he was spinning in circles, like he hadn't been sure until that second that you were real. You drop your bag on the hook by the door and say the same 2 words. Good boy. That was the deal between you. 3:10, the hiss, the 40 steps, the spinning. For years it never broke once. You got taller. The smudge his nose left on the glass climbed with you, a little higher each year. Then one summer you were 18 and the smudge stopped climbing, because you'd stopped being the one coming home. There was a car packed in the driveway, and a long drive to a school 4 states off. You knelt and held his face, and said you'd be back before he knew it. You believed it, you weren't lying. He sat in the driveway, and watched the car get small. Then he went inside, and he climbed up to the window, and at 3:10, he put his nose to the glass. Because in his arithmetic, you'd just gone to school, and school let out at 3. He didn't know about 4 states. He knew about 40 steps. The first Thanksgiving you meant to come. The flights were a fortune, your friend's family was closer, so you called instead. Your mom held the phone toward the window so you could hear him. You said his name, and his ears went straight up, searching the room for you. You laughed about it. It was sweet. You'd see him at Christmas. At Christmas, there was snow on the roads, and a new someone you wanted them to meet, and you went there instead. Your mom said don't worry about it, honey. She didn't tell you he still went to the window at 3:10. She didn't tell you the cold came through the glass, and he sat in it anyway, shivering, watching the corner where the bus used to stop. You were busy in the way that swallows years without you noticing the bites. Finals, then a first job, then a city, then a person, then a lease, then a life with its own gravity. Back on Linden Street, the deal still held. 3:10, the window, the nose to the glass. The bus didn't even run your old route anymore. He waited for a hiss the street had stopped making years ago. He waited for it anyway. Hope doesn't check the schedule. Your mom mentioned him sometimes on the phone, the way people mention weather. He's slowing down. He sleeps a lot. He still sits at that window every afternoon, the funny old thing. You said and you meant it, and then your call waiting beeped, and you took the other call. That was the size of him in your life now, a soft spot between 2 more important things. You didn't see his eyes go cloudy and pale, like milk stirred into water. You didn't see him miss the jump to the sill the first time, and look around, embarrassed, to check that no one saw. Your mom started stacking cushions under the window so he could climb up in stages. When his legs got worse, she set a folded blanket on the floor beneath it, in the rectangle of light, so he could lie where he could smell the glass. He couldn't reach the window anymore, so he brought the window down to the floor and waited there. 3:10, every day, for a boy who was 30 by now and didn't know any of this was happening. You want me to tell you he understood you weren't coming? He didn't. Every single afternoon, for him, was the afternoon it might finally be true. That's not sad to a dog. That's the best hour of the day. He spent 11 years certain the next 3:10 might bring you up the 40 steps. He was never once disappointed, because tomorrow always had another 3:10 in it. The last winter your mom carried him to the window because his legs wouldn't. He'd gotten so light. All that waiting hadn't weighed a thing. There was a Tuesday in March. Nothing marked it. You were in a meeting. You remember the meeting, not the date. At home your mom set him in the light under the window at 3:10, the way she always did. He lifted his head toward the glass. The ears tried to go up and got halfway. He was listening for the hiss. She swears he was listening for the hiss. And then he just rested his chin on his paws, in the warm rectangle, facing the corner where the bus used to stop. And he let it go, quietly, the way he'd done everything except love you. Your mom sat on the floor with him a long time. Then she called you, and got your voicemail, and didn't leave the news on a machine. She buried him under the maple, the tree you used to turn at, the last landmark before the gate. So that he's exactly where the shape of you always appeared. If you ever came up those 40 steps, you'd come to him first. She told you on the phone a week later, careful, like setting down something that might break. The dog died, honey, Rusty, back in March. I didn't want to put it in a message. You said the right things. You were sad in a real but manageable way, the way you're sad about things that happened far off, to someone else's afternoons. You did not yet understand what you'd missed, because no one had told you about the window. It was 3 more years before you stood in that house again. Your mom was moving somewhere smaller, and the yellow house was emptying out. You came back to carry boxes. You came back the way you always meant to, just for the wrong reason, and far too late. The rooms were smaller than your whole life had made them. The hook by the door was still there. You put your hand on it without deciding to. And then you went to the window. You don't know why. Your feet knew before you did. The afternoon light came through it in the same long rectangle, lying on the floor like something set down and forgotten. The sill was white paint worn down to bare wood in 2 curved grooves, the exact width of a small dog's front paws. 11 years of climbing up had sanded the wood smooth. You put your fingers in the grooves. They fit a thing that wasn't there. And on the glass, low down, lower than you'd think, there was a smudge no cleaning had ever taken off. A faint oval, nose height for a dog lying on the floor, the last place he could reach, the place he waited from at the end. You knelt, then you sat, then you lay down in the warm rectangle, because that was the only way to be where he had been. From down there you could see exactly what he saw for 11 years, the gate, the maple, the corner, the long empty road where a boy used to appear. At 3:10, a school bus you'd never seen before stopped at the end of the street. The air brakes let out a long, tired hiss. The same sound. The street still made it. It had only moved 1 corner over. Your whole body went up at that sound before your mind could stop it. Some animal part of you the dog had trained without either of you knowing. For 1 second you understood the window completely. You understood being sure, against all the evidence, that the next minute brings the person back. You looked at the corner. You waited for the 40 steps. Nobody came up them. Of course nobody came. You were the one who was supposed to come, and you finally had. And you were 33 and lying on the floor and 3 years too late to be caught. Outside, under the maple, the grass had grown back over a small flat patch the way grass does. You went and stood on it. The last landmark. The first thing he'd have seen of you, every day, if you'd ever once turned in at that tree. You said the 2 words out loud to the yard. Good boy. There was no one to spin in circles, no whole body wag, no proof you were real. Just the wind in the maple and the bus pulling away 2 streets over. Here is the truth, and it doesn't tie up, and I won't pretend it does. He loved you with everything for 11 years, and you loved him too, just thinly, from far away, in the soft spot between more important things. Both of those were real. That's the part that aches. It wasn't that you didn't love him, it's that he never found out you'd stopped coming. He died believing the very next afternoon might bring you up the 40 steps. In a way, that's the kindest thing that ever happened to you. So you lay back down in the warm rectangle under the window and stayed until the light moved off the floor, keeping, just once, 3 years late, the window he kept for you 11 years running.